It's Fill Your Plate Now, where every bite brings you closer to the farm gate and further from what's unhealthy. Now here's your hosts, Julie and Tammy, helping you live well by filling your plate well.
Tammy, we're about to talk about one of my favorite topics, sleep. I love sleep. You know, one of the saddest moments of my life is when the alarm goes off, but I get over it because once I'm up and I shake off the sleep, I'm good. But I am excited about today's program, and you are my guest, even though you're also my co-host, Tammy Baker, the general manager of the Arizona Milk Producers, and a nutritionist and my nutrition ninja.
Can't forget the nutrition ninja
Yes,
part, right?
we can't.
Yeah, no, who doesn't like sleep?
I know.
Yeah.
You know, we don't really remember what's going on when we sleep, but
Maybe a dream here
maybe a
and there.
dream. I've had some good dreams lately. You know, that's a topic too. We might ask an expert on dreams and what they mean. I always am fascinated by that stuff. Anyway, you're going to talk all about sleep, and I've got a great set of questions. So are you ready?
I am ready to go.
And there's no dozing off. So if I don't ask a good question, I don't want to make this boring for you. So, okay. Why is sleep so important, and why do we keep hearing that people are not getting enough?
Well, I think I'll reverse that and say, first of all, the reason we're hearing people aren't getting enough sleep is because they actually aren't. The National Sleep Institute says we need anywhere between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per day, and that's actual sleep, not just laying in your bed trying to fall asleep. And actually, as we get older, we actually need a little less, 7 or 8 hours.
Okay.
But statistics show that 60% or more are getting 6 hours or less of sleep.
So the majority of the population is not getting enough sleep.
Yes, and the important thing about sleep is just regenerating our body. You know, it really helps us to feel good and energized and our mind to be clear, but also it's related to things like cardiovascular disease if you're not getting enough sleep.
Wow.
High blood pressure, problems with glucose tolerance, all of those things are things that lack of sleep can contribute to. And of course, exhaustion and just not being able to concentrate. You know, we know that kids, if they don't get enough sleep and don't eat well, have a hard time concentrating. And I will say the very best time, but also the worst time for my sleep was when I had a newborn. And you realize when you're sleep deprived with a newborn, how important sleep is because you just are not functioning. It is difficult.
Oh, I bet. And I know every mom can vouch for that. So let's repeat that then. The average person needs anywhere from, you said, 7 to 9 hours?
7 to 9 hours. As
Okay.
we get a little older, 7 to 8 hours
Is sufficient.
is sufficient. But
Okay.
a lot of people are getting 6 hours or less.
Do naps help?
That's a very good question. I think they can help regenerate somewhat, but I think that block of time where we're getting sleep, and you know, sometimes we just have so much to do, we just don't get the sleep. But there's other times when maybe we're under stress. Sometimes medications can cause sleep deprivation, and of course, then, you know, it's what we eat and what we do, and that's what we were going to talk about today, a little bit about that whole cyclic thing with food and sleep.
Yeah, so let's get into that then. There is this relationship between what we eat and quality sleep. So talk about that.
Well, you know, it actually goes both ways, which if you know anyone that's had to work night shifts, oftentimes their diet is not as good or goes downhill a little bit because they're not getting enough sleep, or they're trying to stay awake and they're eating things to keep them awake and then they can't go to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
The same thing is true the other way around. Diet can have a substantial effect on helping you to sleep or not sleep.
Okay.
So there's things we can't control, like stress sometimes, but diet we can control. So to the extent we can control it, we can help our sleep patterns.
So what are the types of foods that we need to, number one, stay away from, and maybe foods that will help? Are there two categories here?
I would say there's two categories, and like most things, it's a little clouded because it also depends on time of day you're consuming, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But there's really the big three as far as contributing to lack of sleep.
Oh, okay.
Caffeine, alcohol, and simple sugars like sugary desserts or candies, those kinds of things. Now, caffeine, everybody's different. You can be very caffeine sensitive, in which case you probably don't want to have anything containing caffeine, which would be coffee, some of your soft drinks, and actually even chocolate has caffeine in it. But most people can tolerate some caffeine. If you're having trouble sleeping, I would recommend trying to cut caffeine off at noon or before, because if you have a cup of coffee in the afternoon, it may keep you up later if you're sensitive to caffeine or if you're not used to having it regularly. They also say with caffeine, you should limit it to about 4 cups, equivalent of 4 cups of coffee a day. But the one thing you have to keep in mind, if you ever take a measuring cup out and you take a cup of water and you put it in your coffee mug, for most people, it's only going to fill it about halfway.
Sure.
Because our cups have gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah,
So
I
was
with
feeling really good about my caffeine consumption until I looked at the size of my coffee cup, and then I realized, well, I've got to cut
16
it
ounces,
back.
Tammy.
Yeah. 16 ounces of coffee twice a day is all I need, not 4.
Yeah.
So again, caffeine's okay in the morning unless you're super sensitive and having trouble sleeping, and then some people need to cut it out altogether. But for the most part, if you stop the caffeinated beverages by noon, you should be okay.
should be
and
fine.
that can help with your sleep.
So, and then if you like a glass of wine and a little bit of chocolate at night, that needs to be dialed back if you're having trouble sleeping too, right?
Chocolate does have caffeine in it. Alcohol is another thing that can inhibit our sleep. A little bit of alcohol is usually okay, but you don't want to consume it too close to when you're going to bed because it will relax you and help you to sleep, but then when it wears off, it could wake you up.
Isn't that wild?
And if you have too much alcohol, it just interferes with your sleep cycles
And
altogether.
plus, it's not healthy.
It's not healthy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons, but that's a whole nother segment.
So, yeah. So on the flip side of it then, what are some foods that we can consume and maybe at certain times of the day that actually would help with our sleep?
Well, the only other thing I wanted to mention too with the what you want to watch how much you eat of is sugary, simple carbohydrates.
That's why I threw the chocolate in there with the wine.
And the chocolate gets you on both of them, right? It's the simple sugars and the caffeine.
Yeah.
It's not that you can't have those things at all. However, if you're having trouble sleeping, simple carbohydrates can spike your blood sugar and then it goes down. And just those uneven bouts of blood sugar can contribute to not sleeping well. And again, a lot of it is after 12 noon. If you're really sensitive, some things maybe you can even go till 2 o'clock. But those 3 things you really want to cut down on or cut out if you're having a lot of trouble sleeping.
Okay. Does the time and amount of food we eat affect our sleep?
It does. It does. In addition to watching those 3 things and the timing of when you have them, amount of food that we eat can vastly affect our sleeping as well. For instance, you really want to have a big breakfast with protein and carbohydrates and all kinds of healthy foods, a medium-sized lunch. They always say breakfast like a king, dinner like a pauper. You don't want to eat a heavy meal late at night. If you have a lot of fat in the meal and a lot of protein in the evening meal, it just takes longer to digest, and so it makes you restless and you'll have a harder time falling asleep. The best thing to do is when you eat an evening meal is to eat it by 6 p.m. Now, not everybody can do that. So if you can't do that, then I would say you want to make that evening meal small, low in fat, and something that's just going to digest real easily so that you're not restless and having a hard time falling into a deeper sleep.
Yeah, I know when you go out with friends and, you have a big meal or even at a party and you're snacking through the whole evening. And by the time you get done, at least I do, have this full feeling, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm going to be able to relax. So I
Yeah.
really needed to, if I do that, go out with friends, I need to dial it back in time so that my food's digested, my system's kind of settled, is basically what you're saying.
Yes, and if you're going out like to a restaurant, the other thing that you do tend to stay out
Eat
longer
more.
because you're talking with
yeah.
people, and you don't watch how much you eat. But also, restaurant food tends to have a lot higher fat content. That's why it tastes so good. And so you're also getting more fat, which is also going to contribute to you digesting it more slowly.
Sure. Okay, then. So there are, kind of asked earlier, but to your point, you had to kind of give insights as to those foods that we shouldn't eat at night if we're having trouble sleeping. But what nutrients and foods are helpful to sleep better?
Well, I think the good news is that we know we're supposed to eat from all 5 food groups, dairy and protein, fruits and vegetables, and complex carbohydrates, the ones that are higher fiber. And those are the foods that we do want to stick with. But actually just pinpointing even more, if we want to have a very restful evening and a good night's sleep, your protein and your complex carbohydrates are 2 things we want to make sure that we regulate throughout the day. Your high-quality proteins, which are primarily from animal products, have all of the amino acids. And one of those amino acids, tryptophan, is involved in helping to generate more serotonin, a brain chemical that helps us to relax. Now, that has to be in combination with some carbohydrates, too.
Okay.
If you have too much protein, then that tryptophan has a hard time getting through that blood-brain barrier and doing what it's supposed to do. You want your protein to be 30% of your meal or less, and then the carbohydrates help facilitate that amino acid being digested and utilized in the formation of serotonin.
But that 30% protein, is that mainly in the evening meal, or is that percentage similar for all 3 meals?
Percentage-wise, they say that really 30% protein, 33% protein is the high end of the amount of protein you want.
Okay.
So if at breakfast a third of your plate was protein, which is, your animal products, including dairy, and then at dinner maybe, or even if at breakfast you had 40%.
Okay.
But then by dinner you had 10%, 20%
Sure. Okay.
of your meal as protein and some complex carbohydrates to help to get that tryptophan through to the brain and being manufactured into serotonin.
I get it.
So
what are the, they also talk a lot, and you've talked about macronutrients and how they affect us. So what are they, and how do they affect us as it relates to sleep?
macronutrients are the things we need the most of. Like, for instance, protein.
Hence
is
the word macro.
Yes. And complex carbohydrates. They're macronutrients.
Okay.
And the things that, on the other end of flip side of things, there's micronutrients, which are kind of like your vitamins, your minerals, things we need some of to make sure we're functioning well. But you don't need the quantity you do of like protein or carbohydrates. So you need both. But the macronutrients of complex carbohydrates and protein help with, if we're getting a nice combination of those, will help with helping to release serotonin and help us to relax.
Okay. So speaking of serotonin, what exactly is it, and can foods help us get more of it? In a sense, we all know it. We talk about it, but what exactly is it?
Yeah, I mean, we all talk about Thanksgiving, having turkey, being drowsy. There could be a lot of reasons for that, but one could be the tryptophan in the protein and the carbohydrates together, helping to generate more serotonin. But serotonin is basically a brain chemical that helps us to relax. And if we're getting a healthy diet that's composed of proteins, carbohydrates, and then we also need a variety of other things to help put that serotonin into play and also to regulate our sleep patterns. But protein and carbohydrates are the primary ones that can affect the serotonin, which helps us to relax.
Okay. And I have also heard of melatonin as a sleep aid. Can we get that from foods, and or if we're struggling heavy duty with not sleeping well, should we take some kind of supplement with that?
You know, melatonin's really interesting. There are supplements out there. You can get it from some foods, like I believe cherry juice, pistachios, walnuts. I think avocados even has a little bit of melatonin in it. However, melatonin doesn't help us to sleep. Melatonin actually does not help us sleep in the same way that serotonin relaxes us. It actually helps with the circadian rhythms.
Okay.
Which are the sleep patterns that we have. So melatonin is really the most effective if you're suffering from jet lag. And with jet lag, where you're trying to readjust to another time zone, taking a melatonin supplement or having some foods with melatonin in them, like cherry juice or pistachios or walnuts, can help to readjust that sleep cycle.
Okay.
But it doesn't specifically make us sleepy. It just helps with the adjustment.
Serotonin is going to relax me. Melatonin is going to help my sleep cycle.
Yes.
If it's off, especially if I travel a lot.
Yes.
So that is insightful. I love that. Okay. We just talked about, just a little bit earlier, macronutrients. Talk about the impact of micronutrients, and are there any relationships or benefits for us to consider when it comes to sleep?
You know, eating a balanced diet can help to give us all those micronutrients. And if we're in a real pickle and haven't been eating well, a multivitamin occasionally really functions kind of like a seatbelt. You know, you need to eat the food first, and you need to drive well first if you're in a car. But the seatbelt's extra protection. The multivitamin can serve as extra protection during those times when you're maybe not eating quite like you should be for various reasons. But most of the micronutrients are very important in helping with the serotonin formation and all of that, but they're actually more important from the perspective if we are deficient in them, they may shorten our sleep cycle. For instance, calcium and magnesium and potassium are all really important because if we don't get enough of them, it'll affect and shorten our sleep cycle. And vitamin D and vitamin C and vitamin A, the same thing. It can shorten the sleep cycle, make it difficult to fall asleep, because they all play a role in a lot of these brain chemicals being formed. But we see more of a difference if you're deficient rather than more is not necessarily better.
Yeah, you know, our iPhones can check our sleep cycle. Have you ever done that? I have not, so I'm just curious.
There are so many contraptions. Yeah. I actually wear a watch that, you know, it tells you what your heartbeat is. It tells you your blood pressure. It has all, and there is a sleep cycle on there, and I don't do it all the time because I'd be obsessed with it. But if I wear it at night, it will tell me, okay, this is how many hours you've slept. Here's your core sleep. Here's your REM sleep. Here's your, you know, deep sleep. And again, I don't.
You don't check it.
It would keep me up at night if I did it all the time because I'd be so worried about it. But
have you ever looked at it? If you're
yeah, I have looked at it, and it is.
Did you pass?
Well, I don't give out test results, but no, yes, I've had. But what it was helpful for me in seeing is, when I looked at it, I get most of my deep sleep before midnight. You know, or pretty much all of it, and or I get, you know, or I get this much sleep during this time frame. So it kind of told me, okay, I should probably go to bed around this time, or I was in bed 8 hours, but it said I only slept 6.5 or something. So it's like, okay, I need to be relaxed, you know, and realize that if I am in bed for 7 hours, it doesn't mean I'm sleeping 7 hours.
The few time I've paid attention to it, that's what it's like. Well, wait a minute. When I went to bed and when I thought I woke up, Okay, that's 8 hours, but it's saying I only slept deeply for 6. Darn.
And it's not uncommon for people to go
Right.
in and out of sleep cycles and stuff. So, and I should go back to micronutrients too. B6, which is in a lot of our green leafies, but also in milk and eggs. B12, which is in a lot of animal products, and folic acid, which is in a lot of our greens. Those all help regulate in manufacturing serotonin. So those three
Cool.
micronutrients do help, again, in small amounts. And if you're eating, 3 servings of dairy, if you're getting a good amount of protein, if you're, getting those complex carbohydrates and your fruits and vegetables, the micronutrients are usually fine.
Okay. Well, the theme just keeps carrying through this farm gate to plate and sticking with the basics. You're going to be healthy, and in this case, we're going to sleep better, but we've got to make sure that we eat those 5 basic food groups.
Absolutely. I think, that's the key. The 5 basic food groups, making sure you're getting something, if you can, every meal, and then making sure you're getting adequate protein, like a third of your plate, a quarter of your plate of protein, and then the complex carbohydrates, because both of those in combination, and more in the evening of the carbohydrates,
Okay.
will help you with that serotonin production, and which is one factor in helping you to sleep better.
So is there anything that we haven't talked about that relates? We obviously know sticking with the basics and in balanced amounts on our plate should help us with our sleep, but is there any other food hack insights that, well, I always do this and I seem to have a better sleep? Or is there anything like that? It's more...
I think one of the things it's important to mention too is that food is one tool to help us sleep better. It's important to get exercise. Regular physical activity will help to relax you and help to relax your body and help you to work off stress. It's important to have a stress management technique if you're under a lot of stress, because that can keep you up. It's important to look at the medications you're taking and, ask your doctor or your pharmacist if there are any factors in them that would keep you from sleeping. I know there are some medications they tell you to take in the morning because they could keep you up at night if you take them in the evening. So there are a lot of different factors that contribute to getting a good night's sleep or not. And we want to control what we can,
Right.
so that we have the best opportunity. Also having a regular routine, having kind of an evening routine where whatever it is that you like to do, if you like to read for a little bit before you go to sleep, just having that routine, or taking the dog for a walk, that kind of thing too, also helps prepare you to relax and get ready to sleep.
And I've also heard environmentally suggestions: make your room as dark as possible, and make sure it's cool. It's hard to sleep deep when it's hot.
Yes.
I dialed back my air conditioner just by 1 degree, and I feel like it's made a difference. So just making sure that the room is cool, the bed is comfortable, it's dark in the environment. This is a place you're trying to sleep and relax. And
I think all of our senses kick in and sometimes into overdrive. I mean, what we hear. That's why, there are so many machines and tapes now with white noise that you can turn on to help drown out any noise that might contribute to, keeping you awake or waking you up. I think we've all woken up, if you hear thunder or something that's really, really loud, or some kind of a really loud noise can startle you and wake you up. So making sure, as you said, that it's dark, that, you have something to buffer any kind of noise. And again, then, having a routine, getting that physical activity, and then doing what you can with your diet to help facilitate a relaxing evening and sleep.
Yes. And I like the relationship with the food and the things that we need to do to make sure we're getting the levels of serotonin that you've suggested. So we always try to come away with our takeaways. What would you make?
Well, I think, you mentioned the serotonin.
Yep.
Doing what we can with our food
Mm-hmm.
to help make sure those serotonin levels are where they should be to help us to relax. That's really important. And although it's not a cure-all for going to sleep, it's something we can control somewhat by making sure that, we have that carbohydrate-protein combination. I think the second thing, again, would be watching those things that do stimulate alertness, the caffeine too late in the day, alcohol right before bed or too much alcohol, sugary foods that would spike and lower our blood sugar. Watching all of those things and making sure that if we consume any of them, that it's not too close to when we go to sleep. I shouldn't say it quite like that because you don't want to consume alcohol at 10 in the morning, but but not right before you go to bed because it might, cause some disruption in your sleep earlier in the evening if you were to have like a glass of wine. And then just keeping in mind all those other factors, trying to manage stress, getting regular physical activity, which is so very important.
Yes.
And having that routine. And as we just mentioned, blocking out all those other things, too much light, too much sound, all of those things, keeping the room cool.
I think I'm going to sleep better just talking to you.
You're not getting sleepy talking to me, are you?
No,
okay.
Not getting sleepy, but I'm just feeling like I'm going to sleep better talking to you. This was very interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I know we all want to sleep more. We all want to sleep better. But
it's still one of my favorite things to do, so I'm going to keep doing it.
I love it too.
Thank you, Tammy.
Oh, thank you.